Hey everyone, it's Dave. It's my bad. You haven't seen anything from us this year. We've got episodes backlogged, and life got in the way, and I'm sorry. So, starting off with this episode on Jordan Peele and what we've been watching back in February, thought we weren't going to have enough to say about Jordan Peele because everyone said so much, and then we went and recorded a double-length episode. So sorry about that. We'll start catching up every Tuesday as usual, and then I'm going to release an extra episode because we've got some dating back to 2020, including a great one with Christian Toto talking about raising Arizona. So once we get caught up with that, then we'll be good to go. I got some fun stuff planned and lined up, so hope you enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to ScreenGeeks. This is Dave.
This is Barry.
This week we're kind of doing a little bit of a twofer. We're going to be covering a little bit of what we've been watching lately because there's been some cool stuff. And then we're also going to get into talking Jordan Peele's movies that have come out since we've been gone that, holy crap. So it's not to give him short shrift. I want to make sure that's very clear up front. It's just I'm kind of like, I don't know how much more we can say that hasn't been said in the spewing of love and adoration, but we're going to give it a crack. And so if we take less time, I just kind of wanted to have, we haven't talked about what we've been watching for a while outside of when we did WandaVision, which I'm going to talk about again in a little bit. But yeah, let's have a little fun, sir. What, Barry, you were juggling classes that you've never done before and all kinds of craziness. Like if you want to go beyond just like what you've been watching and maybe what you've been reading too, that's fine by me too.
Well, I mean, boy, I'm reading a book right now about the history of the Lone Ranger, which is a weird one for me, and I'm enjoying it. I'm doing a number of articles for Christian Toto's Hollywood and Toto site, and one of them, I'm writing an article on the first major motion picture to ever portray the Lone Ranger. It came out in 1981. It's 40 years old now. It's called The Legend of the Lone Ranger. And the person of notoriety in it is Christopher Lloyd. He plays the bad guy. It was one of his first movies. It's an interesting film. It's got a fascinating history. The lead actor was dubbed. The film was a terribly troubled production. It was an infamous flop when it came out. And I just, I figured I should probably learn more about the Lone Ranger because aside from, just the general stuff and the Johnny Depp movie, I don't really know the character. So reading about the Lone Ranger has been a lot of fun, but it is weird. I've got this big, coffee table book about the Lone Ranger on our coffee table next to Beatrice's Pete the Cat books. So it's a little surreal around here.
So you didn't grow up like watching the cartoon in the 80s or the old serials?
I did. No, I was aware of the cartoon. I was aware of the cartoon, and I was aware of the movie that I just watched, the 81 film, which I'd seen before, but I didn't remember it very well. And it does have this really interesting history, and it's a fascinating flop. So I wanted to write about that. So that's what I've been reading lately. There was a book, there's a new book, another coffee table book about Wes Anderson that got published recently that I had the chance to write about for Toto's site. It was a good book because it deals with the French Dispatch. There's a whole chapter about the new Anderson film, which has been pushed back because of COVID. Everybody from Elizabeth Moss to Bill Murray's in it. So I've been reading a lot of inevitably a lot of entertainment detailed stuff, as well as I'm teaching a class on graphic novels, so a lot of comic books. I'm reading comic books like I used to when I was a child, which is fun,
but it's work.
Except it's homework. I mean, and I'm taking notes as I'm reading it, which is maybe that's perfect. That just makes me the uber comic nerd. So
there you go. Has anything been sticking out in particular to you? I know we've talked about stuff, but I didn't know if you want to talk about it here too.
I mean, Charles Burns' Black Hole just blew my mind. I love it. It's like a 70s teen sex comedy crossed with a David Cronenberg body horror film. And it's in black and white, and it's rich and full of metaphors and all these ideas about how uncomfortable it is to not feel comfortable in your own body. Absolutely brilliant. Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, which I'd heard about and never read before, blew my mind. It's been fun with this sort of class to hone in on the literature of this art form, because I've read The Death of Superman, and I've read I've read Watchmen so many times. It's been fun to see just how broad comic book artistry is, and to see these different artists who've made works that are not about men in capes, but deeply personal, deeply autobiographical, very vulnerable, and to see how well that form works at the comic book level.
And then I made you read Paper Girls. So
I like Paper Girls. Paper Girls is great. No, I dig stuff like that. I mean, that's the kind of comic book I would read just normally casually. But doing a class as I am right now about greatness in comic book art, it's like doing a literature class. And if it causes someone like me to read stuff that I've never read before, that's just all for the better. So it's been good. It's been great. I've been feeling much more confident. I actually spoke with Escape Velocity. I contacted
Oh,
Escape
cool.
Velocity, one of our favorite comic book shops in Colorado Springs. They published an independent graphic novel about 10 or so years ago called Velvet Garden, which I loved, about Polybius, the mythical '80s arcade game that may or may not have been created by the government to control the masses. It was a really wonderful graphic novel, and I contacted Escape Velocity, and they were really sweet to give me some information, help me out with it. And they basically said, like, hey man, like, we're 20 degrees over here, so you know hope you find what you're looking for, but yeah, enjoy yourself, Hawaii boy.
Yeah,
So
screw you. Yeah.
screw
No,
you.
no, they're great
No,
down
no,
there.
honestly, no, actually, no, nothing like that. They could not have been. I mean, they got back to me really fast. I told them I was teaching a class, but I mean, they didn't have to. They went out of their way to check and do some digging for me. I really appreciate them. I love those guys. I love that comic shop. I'm glad it's still there in the heart of downtown Colorado Springs.
There we go. Yes. Anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, if we're just
No
talking
is
about stuff.
okay. No is okay. If you're, I know you're kind of brain frazzled too. So,
Oh no, no, no. Well, no. I mean, there is a lot to talk about. I mean, just stuff I've been absorbing. I mean, the last article, the latest article I published, movie that came out on February 5th. It's called Son of the South, not Song of the South, Son of the South. I can't tell you how many times I would be writing about the article. I'm like, Song of the no Son of the South. Yeah, Son of the South. It's a movie that's obviously being released on purpose for Black History Month. It was shot 2 years ago. It's just getting a theatrical release. It's written and directed and edited by Barry Alexander Brown. He's edited some of Spike Lee's best films. He's a brilliant editor. It's the true story of this white son of a KKK Klansman. Guy's name is, he's still with us. His name is Bob Zellner, and he, despite his racist lineage, he aided activists in the civil rights movement. Did all this stuff, and the movie, despite good intentions, there's good performances in it. It's a movie about the civil rights movement from the point of view of a white guy, and it's just there's been too many of those kinds of movies, and I can name you the long list. I'm not going to
yeah.
bore you, but the guy who plays Bob Zellner, that's also a problem. His last name is Till. I think Lucas Till. He plays MacGyver on the new MacGyver show, and he was the star of this awful movie that came out a couple years ago called Monster Trucks. Anyway, he's a good looking guy. He's a handsome dude, not really an actor. And he's not up to carrying this movie about this really important subject matter. So the film has like these great performances in it by Cedric the Entertainer, no joke. Once again, great dramatic performance, just like he did in First Reformed. Brian Dennehy, one of the last performances he ever gave. He plays Bob Zellner's racist Klansman grandfather, great performance. But Lucas Till, man, he's in almost every scene, and he recites his dialogue in exactly the same way in every single moment. It's frustrating because clearly this was a labor of love. I mean, the movie is dedicated to John Lewis and Dr. Maya Angelou, and Spike Lee is the executive producer. So the pedigree is fantastic. The intentions were good. It's just not a great film, and it's primarily because they have the wrong guy in the lead, and that was heartbreaking because you could tell like everybody's really, everybody's heart was in it, but it's just not a great film. And there's a lot of great movies about the civil rights era, particularly in the documentary field. Right now, there's a documentary very popular called John Lewis, Good Trouble. There's also MLK, FBI, which is fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's some good stuff out there. So as much as I'd love to, support this film, it's like I think you're better off learning about Bob Zellner than you are watching the movie Son of the South, unfortunately.
Ouch. Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll miss this one. I just saw
Yeah.
Antebellum hit Hulu. I'm like, I'll give that one a spin finally.
That's what we're talking about, especially what we're going to be talking about today. Antebellum, I'd say, I don't know if Jordan Peele is already a genre, the way George A. Romero and John Carpenter became their own genre in a way. But I do think Antebellum is kind of like, it's one of these movies that I think it exists, and I think audiences were ready for it because of films like Get Out and Us. It is a horror film, obviously, with dealing with bigotry and racism. It's a good film. I like Antebellum.
Cool. Right on. Anything else you want to cover? Or?
Well, I mean, I just recently watched a 4-year-old movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was fun. Any excuse I have to revisit the first Indiana Jones movie is always fun. Let me ask you, Dave,
Yeah.
because I mean, I don't think there's any question that it's one of the greatest movies ever made. Um, the conversation comes up a lot whenever I talk about the movie. People want to talk about the problematic quality of the film. They want to talk about the relationship between Mrs. Ravenwood and Mr. Jones when he says, and she's like, we were children. It's like, you know what you were doing. Yeah, that they broke up because of her father Abner objecting to the relationship. And apparently it was 10 years ago, and I'm wondering, like, how old is Karen Allen? How old is she supposed to be when we meet her in that Tibet bar that she's running by herself? I don't know. It's definitely something to grapple with because I've never really considered it before. I just think Indiana Jones is kind of a jerk. He is, he's always been a jerk. I mean, yes, he's heroic and awesome and brilliant, but he's a jerk. He's a terrible teacher. He's barely there for his students. I mean, I can't imagine the guy ever makes office hours, but I digress. But watching the film the other day, I thought this is interesting. Maybe just because I'm older and I have a daughter, I've never thought about like how old was she when Indiana Jones was having that relationship? Because clearly he's older than her. Anyway, what do you make of this? Have you ever thought about this?
I have not revisited this movie in a long time.
Okay.
I made the very idiotic decision to bring up the idea of, hey, I wonder just wonder out loud. The answer was no, but I wonder if Abby's getting close enough to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. And let's just say, even though I was going to come to the no, it was gotten there for me, and rightfully so. So Steph was like, "What's wrong with you?" And rightfully so again. Like, that's the challenge of navigating fatherhood. Is it's like, I love this thing. I watched it when I was a kid. Is it really appropriate though? Ugh. So it's been forever since I watched it. It's hard to look at films that are that old through the lens of today. And let me be very clear when I say that. I'm not saying that problematic things aren't problematic things. There's a difference between saying, yeah, that's problematic and it probably shouldn't have happened and it's not okay, and then just saying we just shouldn't watch any of this stuff anymore. Because there's some fantastic art out there that's very dated and of its time that isn't compatible with what's societally acceptable now. I'm sure there's lots of stuff in Raiders of the Lost Ark that doesn't quite fly. We just watched Shrek tonight with Abby for the first time, and there's stuff in there I'm just like, oh boy, okay. But it's also a kid's movie from however many years ago.
20 years ago now.
Yeah, is it? Am I really gonna? I'd rather have the conversation and then discuss it as opposed to like pretend it didn't happen or just pretend the entire thing doesn't exist. I think it's worthwhile to have that contextual conversation, and then we can move forward and have that lens. Like, that's something I really appreciate about the Disney Treasures collections when they were making those. Was there were several times where Leonard Maltin would get on and say, "Hey guys, you're gonna see stuff here in a minute that's not okay, and it wasn't okay then, but it's important to have that context as opposed to just like editing the entire thing out. Let's not pretend it didn't happen. Let's have the conversations about it." And I understand there are folks who are just like, cancel it all. And I hate the word cancel culture. I think there's a very distinct difference between people saying, I don't agree with what your stance is on whatever, and therefore I'm not giving you my money. That's not canceling someone. That's voting with our wallet. That's completely okay. It's not censorship. We have the right, we have the right to speak, not necessarily to be heard. So I just went on a massive tangent there. Sorry.
No,
it's a complex conversation.
No, I mean, no, it's a worthwhile thing to talk about. I mean, just in this single case, I mean, for me, it's always about intent. Because with Raiders of the Lost Ark, I mean, the movie is obviously saying this is not okay. The movie does not linger on this revelation, but the film clearly has a moral center, and it's telling us that Indiana Jones, being the Humphrey Bogart type, this being the 1930s, and also being someone who clearly has no problem going to a different country, invading the lives of different cultures, going into their temple and stealing a golden idol. Clearly, this guy is not a saint, clearly. And it takes him 3 movies to have any sense of faith. In all of the 3 films, we'll just talk about the trilogy. Although, I guess even King with Crystal
There's only 3 movies. There's only 3 movies.
Fine, whatever, fine. I'll play your game. But yeah, the 3 films, they all begin the same way. He has a very detached and studious understanding of the thing he's going after. And by the end of the film, in order to save himself and everyone around him, he has to believe, he has to have faith. It's all three movies. It's not just people talk about, the cup of Christ. I mean, no, he has to believe in, traditional biblical belief for the first film, and the second film, it's I guess Hindi. I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't know how accurate any of that stuff is, and probably not at all.
How much does it really matter? I mean, to be honest, and that in and of itself can be problematic too.
Well, the point being is that it's this man of science who has to become a man of faith by the end of the film in order to believe, and I just find that really interesting. So, but anyway, like in terms of Indiana Jones having an inappropriate relationship with Marion Ravenwood, the most iconic, female lead in those films, like I think it's not that I'm giving the film a pass. I think the movie deals with it in a way that's timid, but at least they're acknowledging it, which is kind of a brave thing to give the character a little bit of a dark shade.
It adds complexity. It brings some shadow into the character as opposed to just being very stark lines.
I mean, I ran into a recent thing with a similar. The movie is as old. It's Escape from New York. The first Snake Plissken movie came out the same year as Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I don't know when the last time it was that you saw the film. Do you remember pretty well, or?
It's been a while. I need to revisit.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's been a while for me too, and I revisited the movie. There's a scene early on where Snake Plissken is, searching for the president, and he's going into the basement of a Radio City Music Hall, and he comes and he's going down a dark corridor, and he sees in this room that this woman. There's no sound in this scene. This woman is being taken advantage of by three men. They're literally passing her around. It's awful. And Snake, the camera lingers on Snake. He's kind of watching it for a moment, and then he just walks on. He does not save this person. And I thought, it's an awful moment, and it just indicates kind of in a similar way to what we talked about before. I mean, he's a jerk, but the movie knows it.
He's not a good guy. Yeah.
The film is not celebrating this moment. This movie is not, exploiting this moment. The moment is saying, this guy is a jerk. He may be, the hero, so to speak, of this movie, but he's not our hero, and he's not going to act in heroic ways. And it's like, it's a very troubling moment, but, I wouldn't say it was problematic as much as it's giving us a character who is very hard to like.
Yeah.
And it's a big, and we can debate about how much that's hurtful or how much that's just, the screenwriter being honest in a way that's, alienating to the audience.
Yeah. You bringing that up kind of reminds me of Used Cars. I just saw that. I saw that at the last WrestleMania that the Draft House put on. And I wanted to bring up, like, oh, shoot, what is it, Overboard that he did with Goldie Hawn?
Yeah, Overboard, yeah, with Goldie Hawn.
That movie's problematic from top to bottom. Like,
yes, it is.
Holy cow. Like, I watched it, I'm like, I understand the humor here, but, that's going some really messed up places if we'd stop to think about it for more than 30 seconds. But Used Cars it's a very crass movie. It's very clearly like Kurt Russell saying, hey, I'm not a Disney boy anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But there's a lot of problematic stuff that happens around exploiting women. And it's like, I'm not saying any of that's okay. It helps to provide context to understand that stuff was acceptable back then. I don't think that stuff would fly in a movie now. Doesn't make it okay then. I think we have to leave room for human growth. And like you bring up the indie example, he has to have somewhere to grow from. Is that a choice that most people would have made? Possibly not. But it's not a forgiven act necessarily. It's not a redemptive act of it. It's right. We all have things in our past that we're not proud of. And that's kind of how I would more take that. Totally understand if people can't get there, but that's just where I am.
Not to say that I necessarily like that kind of, layer to the characters that, I grew up just accepting as heroes, but there is something about that makes the conversations like this, I think, more interesting than just talking about how cool his whip is. I mean, as you might have heard, Harper Lee wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, right? And Atticus Finch, one of the greatest, fictional characters of all time. And then a couple of years ago, the never published sequel, Ghost at a Watchman, was published, and it revealed that Atticus Finch, as created by Harper Lee way back in the day, envisioned him to be a secret white supremacist. And the fans don't like that at all. because that's horrifying, you know.
Yeah.
The idea being that the case that he committed to in the original film, the whole business with Boo Radley and all that, it was because he saw it as his duty because he was a man of the law. And that later on, Scout, his daughter, found out that this whole time, I mean, he's reading this racist literature and going to these secret meetings, and that he's actually a bigoted white supremacist who, you know, doesn't believe in integration and all sorts of things. And, you know, and the thing is, like, this isn't, you know, fan fiction. Harper Lee wrote this. And there's a whole story about why we haven't had that material available now. But, you know, between Atticus Finch being the great white hope, you know, being this, you know, figure who, you know, it was definitely, the character was very important, especially in the civil rights era. Seeing, like, you know, this is a fictitious example of the kind of justice that we need to aim for. But now, you know, I think it's interesting to make it a conversation about, you know, how can someone who is, you know, has such a hateful ideology in his heart, but he's capable of doing this really, you know, beautiful act that's, you know, seems on the surface to be selfless. I don't know. I don't mind the existence of Ghost Set of Watchmen. I think it makes the character of Atticus Finch much more complex and a lot more, you know, troubling.
Okay, so the joking answer is George Lucas created midichlorians. Doesn't mean I have to take it seriously. But on a more serious answer is, did Harper Lee actually want to have that book published?
That's a great question. It's a controversial thing.
Because if so, okay, we can have that discussion. But if she saw, you know, if she didn't, I would venture it's probably not unreasonable to say she saw what happened with this work she did, and she's like, yeah, I don't think this is going to help if this ever sees the light of day. I don't care that I wrote the book. Because if it had, it would have been released before, did it release after her death or right before? I forget.
It was before. She was alive when she signed off on everything. Yeah, I mean, I'll say really quickly, I mean, the story is that Ghost Set of Watchmen was an earlier version of the book. And it was, you know, the way it was all set up was that To Kill a Mockingbird was supposed to be a flashback that happened throughout Ghost Set of Watchmen. And people read it and said, you know, get rid of all the modern day stuff. Go to the past. Talk about, you know, Scout watching her father, you know, do this amazing thing in a courtroom for this man. And, you know, so she shelved Ghost Set of Watchmen. And then, you know, out of nowhere, suddenly, you know, I saw this news that it's going to be published. There were a lot of people who were afraid that Harper Lee, in her old age, was being manipulated by friends and people close to her, you know, taking advantage of, obviously, the money involved. But what's been reported, and I have no, you know, obviously I have no idea how true this is or isn't, but apparently the people who published the book, they did a bit of digging. They said, you know, Harper Lee was at meetings talking about, you know, the cover. I mean, she was, you know, she had her wits about her. She was not being controlled. She didn't have people around her. They claim that it was legit and up, that she, you know, said, like, this is a decision I'm making. This is not, you know, she didn't have people there, like, watching her. So, yeah. And apparently this was before she passed away.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. But, you know, who knows? Who knows?
Fair enough. Okay, I was just curious.
Controversial topic, but yeah, wow. But I don't know. Like, I honestly think just because it makes the conversation rich, and the book is no longer, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird is no longer the standoff book about how this great white guy saves the poor black people. I like that Ghost Set of Watchmen also exists too, because it makes all of that messy, and it makes makes the conversation deeper and richer, as opposed to, you know, it's not just like, you know, Matthew McConaughey at the end of A Time to Kill. It's a lot, you know, there's a lot more to it.
Fair enough. Like like this is where we get into headcanon as opposed to what the artist intended, and what do we respect and what do we, you know what? Well, To Kill a Mockingbird is still there.
The midichlorian thing is a really good example. I mean, you know, it's like, do you acknowledge this whole, I mean, George Lucas, the creator himself, came up with it. I mean, do we acknowledge this whole mechanical thing? No. You're like, no. Or, you know, is it like a salad bar? Do we just pick and choose what we want? I mean, you know, that's a really good point, because I'm sure there's lots and lots of literary scholars and professors and teachers who are like, yeah, Ghost Set of Watchmen does not exist. It's To Kill a Mockingbird, nothing else.
That's fair. Okay, you brought up George Lucas. Do you have anything else before I jump into stuff I've got?
No,
okay, cool. I finished. So I had a COVID scare. We'll just say that. Didn't have it. Had symptoms got the brain probe. Turns out I didn't have it, and everything got back to normal. I'm doing good. But I laid low for a day just to be safe. Like, you know what? I'm going to finish up The Mandalorian season 2. I understand why the hype was there. I am so proud of every friend and colleague and people who did not post spoilers. Like, I got a little spoiled on a few things, but for the most part, it was just kind of, it was just beautiful. It was so much fun. We're actually going back to start watching the Clone Wars because of the characters that we did because we're here. It's good, and we need to watch it. Like, we're like, hey, why not? Need something to watch at night sometimes. And seeing some of the characters from that series show up in The Mandalorian, I'm like, I want to know more about these characters. So there's lots of fan service in a way, but it's so well executed and the stories are so well told. Like, I would have no problem with them giving Dave Filoni and why am I brain farting on Iron Man director Jon Favreau. On them giving them the keys to the Star Wars kingdom. Just like, for the most part, it's not Skywalker related, which is exactly what I want out of Star Wars. It is an absolute blast. Don't read anything about it. Just like go watch it. I will say that I did make one Battlestar Galactica joke because I could. You've got Katie Sackhoff in it, and there are robots involved, and so of course I called them fracking toasters because I'm a nerd. So there's that. Also watched Freaky. I know we've talked about wanting to cover this at some point. You have so much on your plate, you're going to get to it when you can. This
probably is Halloween, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So this should be
October watching for me.
That's, that would not be bad to wait on. I'm going to steal something from Jeff Canada over at the Slash Filmcast. This movie wished so badly it could be called Freaky Friday the 13th. Like, it's very clear. If you think of it in that context, like, it's that amazing. If actually, I think it worked out better that they weren't able to use Jason Voorhees using that license. Like, the text, like, the Wednesday the 11th and then Thursday the 12th, and that, like, it's very much ripping off from that font. I think we're going to be we're releasing the episode Tuesday, so it should be up for rent today. And I highly recommend doing so. It is an absolute blast. Yes, like, if you've seen the trailer, it is absolutely Vince Vaughn doing Jack Black in Jumanji. Like, 40 or 50-year-old dude in a 16-year-old girl's body, pulling it off entirely uncomfortably too well. But the film only really works if the lead, if the female lead, oh goodness, and I don't have it up in front of me. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit while I'm trying to find it. If she can't pull off the brooding serial killer part of it, like, if that doesn't come together, then it's a one-man show and it's a waste of everyone's time. And in this was not the case in this film. Like, they really brought, let's see, Catherine Newton, that's who's in it. She does a bang up job as the mousy girl, and then the serial killer afterwards. Like, she channels that brooding that Vince Vaughn has at the beginning of the movie brilliantly well. This movie is bloody. If you like those slasher movies, like, the first 10 minutes are outright complete slasher film with all the tropes you need. Like, pretty much every single trope you want is going to be in this movie. It is just an absolute blast. Like, it is hilarious. It uses the gore to very comedic effect at some points. Alan Ruck is a complete jackwagon of a shop teacher, and he's just savoring every jackassy minute of it. And it's great. Like, it's very clear that Christopher Landon, who did the Happy Death Day movies, I know you weren't a big fan of the first one. I love the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet. It's very clear he has a good handle on the tropes of what the genre does and what it needs to do. I know a good friend of ours, Brad McHarg, who's a short film maker and a screenwriter and knows his horror for sure. Does not like it. I'm gonna drag him on at some point. He's too funny not to have on. Didn't like it, and I will say, like, if you're looking for hardcore horror where, like, everyone's in danger, maybe go elsewhere. The only thing I will say, like, if there is a weakness to the film, it's that the victims tend to have it coming, is what I will say. And so once you figure out that pattern, it's a little bit of a bummer, but the ride is just so much fun. I'm totally in. There is a scene with Vince Vaughn playing the 16-year-old girl in a changing room at the Goodwill. No, not Goodwill, more like a Big Lots. If Big Lots had clothes that her mom works at. having a very deep conversation that gets very uncomfortable in very unique ways that just had me biting my finger, laughing, trying not to wake up my family. It has a great sense of humor about itself. It is well worth the time. I haven't had this much fun since another movie you didn't like, Game Night. So yeah, I'm going to that wide shot so you can just shake your head in disapproval at me. It was a heck of a good time though. So definitely well worth checking out. Mandalorian obviously worth checking out. What was the other thing? Oh, WandaVision. So we're at episode 5 as this has come out. There will be no spoilers here. Honestly, like I posted it on my Facebook. Hey, if you haven't seen anything about it and you haven't watched it, don't read a thing about this show. It is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. You know, we went through the first 3 episodes and we've got, you know, the various, you know, decades of sitcoms that are very faithfully recreated. I think if that's all that was there, the show would be a disappointment. It would be a pleasant enough diversion. I would have a good time with it, but I'd be kind of bummed. When we had that first episode, what I knew that wasn't going to happen was even in the first episode, where I will say there's like a Twilight Zone twist involving Vision's boss. Is that vague enough, I think? I was like, okay, there's going to be something else at play here. I'll be honest, I kind of guessed a lot of what was going to happen, and I've been pleasantly surprised at the execution from top to bottom. The 4th episode kind of gives you a little more framework of what's going on in the universe. The 5th episode starts off with a ripoff of the Growing Pains theme that is so painstakingly, beautifully executed. It just made me giggle. It was so dorky. And then the show changed. So I'm going to say it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. I am enjoying it so much I'm actively not reading any kind of thought pieces around it. I don't want to know about anything or anyone or who this person is and what universe and who they are in the comics. And I would just rather watch this show and let it happen as it is and take it as it comes. And then after it's all done, then I can go back and do all the research. But it is an absolute blast. I know you're not going to catch up for a while, so that's why I'm okay. Once we finish the season, I'll probably talk about it a bit on do a review.
I think of the 2 that you mentioned, I can't wait to. I mean, I haven't even seen Cobra Kai season 3, which is embarrassing.
Neither have I. I know. I'm there.
Just barrel through those first 2. I really enjoyed it, but yeah, of the 2 you mentioned, I'm really looking forward to Mandalorian season 2 because that first one, I especially contrasting it with the rise of Skywalker, I just thought this Mandalorian, this is the Star Wars movie I've been waiting for. It's quiet, it's uncomplicated, it doesn't have 17 subplots, it's not trying to set up, all these spin-offs. It's just a story. It feels like it exists in the quiet, underpopulated world of the first film. I love that approach that it's Star Wars stripped down, even though it is spectacular and the effects are great and the action's great, but it's not so cluttered,
It definitely has a Firefly vibe to it too.
Yes. Yeah. I like it when a space Western is done well. Yeah.
Space samurai Western in this case. Like it's definitely got that lone wolf and cub thing going for it too.
I've been thinking about Firefly because Richard Brooks on Firefly?
No. Uh-oh.
He was part of the ensemble cast. Anyway, forgive me, I can't remember his character name, but
I'm gonna look it up now.
Okay, well, I just encountered his first movie the other day. He played the bad guy in The Crow City of Angels.
Okay.
Clearly, he escaped. He escaped a bad movie and a bad role and a bad performance, and he managed to completely salvage his career. So more power to him.
I am trying to find him. Director, writer, sound department, Richard Brooks. Okay, let me look here. Is he an actor?
Yes.
Okay, he's got 78 acting credits. Okay, let's pull it up because I love that show. I've seen it a zillion times, so I will get there. Crow City of Angels. There it is. All right.
Here it is.
Whew. Who is he in Firefly? I am not seeing him. Really? Hang on here.
Did I get that?
Oh, no.
wrong?
Oh, Early! Jubal Early in the last episode. Objects in Space. Okay. He's fantastic. Yes. Okay. I know who he is.
Okay. Yay, I got that detail right.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes, the bounty hunter. Playing a bounty hunter. Hey, there we go. Mandalorian crossover. Like I said, we watched Shrek this evening, and we went back, Steph and I mentally went back to when we were on our honeymoon at Disneyland because that's where we saw it the first time. And with the number of Disney and Disneyland jokes in that thing, it's going to have a soft spot in our hearts, even if it's not particularly spectacular.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but I loved the first Shrek. That made my top 10 best of 2001 list. I don't know how well that holds up, but I saw it at the Denver Drive-In. It's a drive-in that does not exist anymore, and it was a double feature with Evolution. But,
okay.
Remember Evolution?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I adored the first Shrek, and I did not like any of the sequels. I think I liked the spin-off Puss in Boots. I thought that was really cute and fun, but yeah, everyone went crazy about Shrek 2. I didn't think it was very good, and by the time we get to
we called it Shrek the Turd. So I mean, come on.
Yeah, the sequels are just there's barely a story. Yeah, but the first one I thought was great. I mean, it's not The Princess Bride, but it's trying for that kind of irreverence towards fairy tales.
I'm going to cap it after I tell this quick story because we're at like 35 minutes and we're supposed to be talking Jordan Peele too. So, but the reason that this ride, the movie really clicked with us was the day before we saw this movie at the AMC at Downtown Disney. We were at California Adventure and I went on a rather notorious ride called Superstar Limo. We're like, hey, what's this movie? It's okay. You become a famous person. Little did we know we were like setting ourselves up to go on one of the great atrocities of a Disney ride ever made, ever. Like it is a god awful ride. It's so bad that at the end you like walk the red carpet and the paparazzi's taking your picture. And I didn't know they'd take your picture and show your picture at the end like you're going on Splash Mountain or something. And the look on my face was the exact same as when Shrek and Donkey are watching little It's a Small World thing for Farquaad's Kingdom, where they take the picture and he's just like, literally the same expression. And we laughed for 5 minutes straight in the theater and no one else knew why we were laughing and it was fantastic. So that's why.
Tell us more about this ride, Dave. This sounds so.
Oh, you can look it up. Look it up on YouTube. Superstar Limo. Yeah, you essentially become a celebrity. It was supposed to be you're chased by the paparazzi and about the problems of being a celebrity, and then Princess Di died. So then they had to make a complete change to what the ride is, and it is god awful. It is easily the worst ride I've ever been on in my life. Like I still haven't.
Does it still exist?
No, they tore it out and replaced it with the Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor ride instead.
Okay. All right.
Like it's so bad. Like I still haven't forgiven Disney for taking out the Country Bear Jamboree and putting in that Winnie the Pooh like on psychedelic mushrooms ride. This is way worse. Way worse. Like Winnie the Pooh, my daughter at least really enjoyed. So that earned some points. But yeah, no, that I don't remember if it was Expedition. Oh goodness. Hang on here. I think Defunctland on YouTube did a thing about it. I'm going to look it up because there is a fantastic.
I'll look it up. It sounds fascinating.
On the YouTube video, usually we do stuff of old episodes of our stuff. I'm thinking I might just go ahead and put a link to that episode. I'm going to look it up. I want to say it was Expedition Extinct, but I could be wrong. Superstar Limo. Okay, let's see who did stuff. Defunctland did one. Yes, Defunctland, the history of Disney's worst attraction ever, Superstar Limo. It is god awful. Like there are many videos about it, but Defunctland is one of the greatest theme park channels I've ever seen in my life. Like he does full on documentaries about stuff. And, but yeah, that ride. Yeah. I will link to that if you want to see just what
I do. Yeah. I want to see what you went on.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, let's, okay. We're going to like pause. You're just going to see a little wipe or whatever, but I want to pause so we have some kind of transition before we start talking the great films of Jordan Peele.
We're going to do the Star Wars wipe where it's like,
no, it's just going to be like suddenly, hey, we're talking about this now. So we'll be back. And we're back. See, no time passed for you at all. Like it's magic. It's editing. Yay! If you're in the podcast, then you might have heard an ad. I don't know. We'll see. But so while we were gone, like Jordan Peele went from becoming a great comedic sketch comedy writer and actor, to like really a fantastic genre film director. I didn't see this coming.
I mean, you may remember, they had it's not really the Key and Peele movie, so to speak, but they had a movie called Keanu. That
yes.
I like Keanu, but I didn't, I certainly didn't think like, oh man, this is going to be the start of a great comedy movie team. No, I mean, Keanu was kind of one and done and people really don't even remember it. who would have thought? Who would have thought that this guy would go and make his own films and that he would, quickly establish himself as a horror filmmaker of merit, not to mention a completely original and important filmmaker.
Yeah, I had no idea he had this in him. He's like, "Hey, I want to make a scary movie." It's like, okay, well, Blumhouse is backing it. Well, okay, yeah, they give you $5 million and let you go make whatever you make, and if it sucks, well, we're only out $5 million as opposed to sinking 40 or 50 million into a movie.
Yeah.
And then Get Out, the first trailer for Get Out happened, and I'm like, wait, what? This could be promising. And then the movie came out, and I didn't get spoiled, but I had just heard reviewer after reviewer absolutely raving about it, and I'm like, can it really be this good? And even with that elevated expectation, when I went to see it in the theater, back when we went to movie theaters, it completely blew my mind. I just was not prepared. It's very often a horror film will have something to say and not have any substance to the point that it undermines, not subverts, but undermines the actual genre and makes for just a bad horror movie. Or the movie is so scary it just loses any kind of context that it might have had. To walk that line, we have friends on both sides of the political spectrum who just adore this movie. There's this is a masterpiece. It's like, what can this kid do from here? And I mean, my first thought was this is almost like Hitchcock levels, but I'm not saying that because the last time I said that about Shyamalan, and that did not go well.
Yeah, there were a few episodes in the latter season of Key and Peele, I think, that gave an indication that this was coming. If you look at it now in hindsight, they admitted that a lot of their latter episodes were very dark. They did some skits where the punchlines were really ghoulish and sinister. But who knew? Who knew it was leading to this? That was just the most biggest surprise. I'm with you. I mean, the trailer was promising, but it didn't. I don't think it looked like a slam dunk. It looked odd and interesting. There's a number of shots in the trailer that are not in the movie, and I wonder how much the film would have benefited or not benefited from their inclusion. There's a scene. It was like one of the key jump scares in the trailer was that the deer that gets struck that Chris is haunted by early on in the film, the skeleton of the deer reappears in a dream sequence and taunts him. I don't know how well that would have worked. Maybe it was a good idea that it's in the trailer, not in the finished product. I haven't seen it as a deleted scene, just as that little bit in the trailer. But I digress. I mean, I was with you. I saw it opening weekend, and I really loved it. I don't know if I loved it as much as you did. I'll say my star rating was 3. I gave it 3 stars, which probably seems it seems like I underrated it in hindsight. Because I do like it more than just 3 stars. But I didn't care for the ending that much, and I guess we'll get into spoiler territory for a movie that I think all of America has discussed at least 3 times.
It came out 4 years ago, folks. Sorry, spoilers all the way.
Time, folks. Yes, yeah. No, and obviously, if you haven't seen this, obviously pause and watch the movie, come back and listen, because we love the film and we hope you have a fresh experience seeing this. Obviously, if you haven't seen Get Out, don't let this be your way of encountering it, because it is that good. So here's some spoilers. I mean, I didn't like the way the movie shifted into complete horror genre in the last 10 minutes. The sociological stuff, and there's so much of it to unbag. There's a lot of baggage in this movie to unpack. His use of cotton to escape from that chair to get out of that room, that, brilliant for all sorts of reasons. But when it gets to him basically just killing everybody in the house, very satisfying. I just didn't feel as smart as everything that came up to it. I don't know, and I'm not saying that I have a better ending in mind, because I hate the Armitages. I think the name of those. Let's see.
I believe so.
The name of those Armitage. Yeah, that was the name of those dicks. I hate those people so much. They're fictional characters. I'm still angry. You can tell. They're so awful, and it's obviously very satisfying watching them be gruesomely dispatched. But I don't know. I just thought maybe something a little smarter. I do love the way that Chris is, and I'm talking about the Daniel Kaluuya character. And forgive me, we're doing this completely.
We're going to be skipping all over.
We should be talking about this, and we should be talking about the plot. We haven't even done that. But anyway,
it's okay. It's okay.
So Chris's friend shows up at the last second, and it's not only very satisfying, it's very funny. This guy has been keeping the comic relief in check for this movie, which is great, because this film is quite horrifying. The comic relief is natural; it never felt forced. So I mean, I walked out feeling very satisfied, particularly because of the first and second act. But yeah, I don't know. Everything after he gets out of the chair, it's like, okay, I don't know. And I'm not saying that I have a better ending in mind or that he shouldn't have murdered them. I mean, they deserve to die, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It just for me, like that's kind of the movie I expected it to be, and everything that led up to that was just a surprise, scene for scene.
So I wasn't even going to bring up the alternate ending because everyone's like, "Hey, did you know
Please,
there was a
please bring
alternate
it up.
ending?"
Yeah,
My
bring it up.
question for you, we all know why it didn't happen. If you didn't know, it's because the political climate wasn't going to work. It was going to be received badly. Blah blah blah. Do you think, from a story perspective, for you as you walked out, if it had juxtaposed to that really down ending, that would have been what it really was? Would that have made the full blown slaughter of the bad guys work a little more for you? Because I could see it being like, oh, he's going to get out of this scot free. And then it's got that Twilight Zone, oh, God, everything's about to just completely destroy his life at the very end.
It's a great question. It's a hard call because I don't want him to be punished. And
No,
the
no.
cops are showing up. He's clearly going to be punished for multiple murders. Clearly, he's going to be imprisoned for this. So there's something nice about the ending, obviously, because it's about empowerment. It's about escaping a slavery situation, this weird sci-fi slavery situation. Um, yeah, it's hard, but I'll tell you, I saw the original ending, and even though I prefer the other ending because it's upbeat and it's funny and it's surprising, the other ending feels right to me. It just does. It's like the original ending to Fatal Attraction, which I won't get into, but there's a most film fans know Fatal Attraction had this downer of an ending, this awful downer ending, and they reshot it so that it's the feel good audience pleasing ending that it is now. And the original ending of Fatal Attraction is better, and I feel the same way. I don't really like that. I don't really want the original ending to have been the theatrical cut. Because it was nice to walk out with a sense of catharsis and happiness, and we're laughing because Peele obviously could have really raked us through the mud with the ending that he had originally shot.
Like, I think it would have shown massive stones to have that original ending be what shows. Um, I can see the argument that, like, from a story standpoint, from a structural standpoint in the film, that other ending works better. I also have, if there's something that I really appreciate about Peele's work over both films, it's that it's juggling, giving you the catharsis when you need it most. We'll get to that moment in Us, but there are several moments in here where, like, things are ratcheting up, and then he gives you that pressure valve of just enough humor that it lets you, like, breathe for a minute before you start taking the next drop on the roller coaster. And I think it might have been, like, for American audiences, like, it's the difference between artistic merit and audience satisfaction. I'm perfectly fine with the ending that we got in the theatrical cut. I was perfectly satisfied with it when I saw, I got the Blu-ray like release day. No, I pre-ordered it through Vudu and got it on Blu-ray when it came out, but got the digital access ahead of time. So I watched it before it even came out. And I was just like, oh, that's a good ending. There's no way that would have flown in the movie today. People would have hated this movie if that's how it would have ended.
Well, to talk about the ending, just I guess the alternate ending one more time on my part. The film is about introducing this idea of the sinking place. And the sinking place is as a metaphor, but as a literal thing in this movie. The sinking place is this place that silences Black voices. The sinking place is a place where Black people have no agency, they have no power, they have no control. They are being controlled and oppressed and empowered by white people. So, at the end of the film, the theatrical, the real cut that we have, it indicates that Chris has escaped the sinking place. He has somehow climbed out of the sinking place, however you want to say it. Yeah, he's overcome the sinking place. And the original cut, the alternate cut or whatever, it indicates that he is stuck in the sinking place because the sinking place is no longer metaphorical, it's literal. I mean, he's going to be put in prison for this awful crime, and nothing he can say is going to matter because he's a Black man who murdered this rich white family, and he's, that's the awful,
That's the
brutal,
truth. That's the reality.
Yeah. So like he's living in the sinking place. It's now a real place for him. And again, as a socio-political cautionary tale, or however you want to call it, or a real horror scenario, it's very effective. But yeah, considering how bizarre and nightmarish the horror of that film is, it is nice that we're walking away laughing.
Absolutely.
and I guess I want to jump into the point that this movie was nominated for Best Comedy at the Golden Globes, and isn't that fascinating? Because I don't think it's a comedy.
Friggin' Golden Globes, man. Friggin' Golden Globes. I've been on a
Golden
rampage
Globes,
against
man.
those idiots for years.
I mean, Ghostbusters is a comedy, but the thing is, An American Werewolf in London is not a comedy, but it's really, really funny. The characters in it are funny, but the movie's in a comedy. And I would put Get Out in the same category. It's not a comedy. It's just that the characters are funny and the way they deal with life is funny. And you know, they have a rich sense of humor that helps them bring a little bit of, levity to all the horror that they're experiencing. But yeah, it's not a freaking comedy. It's insane.
Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit now into the movie.
Yes, sorry, let's talk about the beginning of the film.
It's okay. Well, no, just I don't even care about talking about the entirety of the film. Just the choices that he makes. Like I was stoked when I saw Daniel Kaluuya's in it because I loved him in what's the episode 15 Million Merits on Black Mirror. I thought he was phenomenal in that. And I was like, this guy needs to break. I hope he does someday. Like, it's kind of a John Boyega kind of situation after Attack the Block. It's like, come on, someone pick this guy up. And when I saw him in it, I'm like, okay, I know this guy can do it. I want to see what this can be. And then we find out that Jordan Peele just knows how to walk a line and point all the fingers that need to happen on a given topic to everybody who needs to hear it. Like, it's not even so much that it's racist. It's even against like white racism, like liberal racism. It's, you can see the mental hoops that would go through to, hey, you should be honored that we want to steal your body because you are good enough to us. And it's like, oh, that's a little too close to real life in some ways. I could see that happening. And it was kind of a check on society. And to pull that off while still being, I think, a very effective thriller, I know it's got the horror movie elements to it, but I would almost say Get Out is more of a thriller than a horror movie. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I think that works. And I like what you bring up. I mean, the movie is, it's about racism, but it's about a very particular type of racism, which is a lot harder. As you said, this hypocrisy of white people, wanting to exploit black people, but, making themselves to be great people for acknowledging.
You're good enough for us to steal.
I would have voted for Obama twice.
3 times. Yeah.
It's, right. Yeah. It's a very particular type of racism. And, it's either because of my ignorance as a white person or just because I haven't seen enough movies. I don't know that I've ever seen a movie deal specifically with this type of racism, this type of condescending, self-righteous racism that white people can exude. So, it was eye-opening. It just made the film different because it's not just racism. It's that there's a sense of righteousness to the Armitages and all the people that they do, because on the one hand, Allison Williams, who I think gives a great performance, probably one of the more underrated aspects of this movie. She's terrific, but like, she's clearly psychotic and scary, crazy. But like the family, because there's this whole community of rich white people around them, they obviously believe that there is a righteousness to what they're doing. It's scarier than like, a satanic cult, because it's like, well, you have a cult, you have to keep it a secret because you're worshiping the devil. It's obviously wrong. This is weirder. This is like, a cult of people who believe in, cloning or, freezing your head next to Walt Disney. I mean, it's like that kind of weird, and they're, using this model of kidnapping African Americans, in a way that's, so hurtful and awful. But, they're like, well, we don't care because, hey, we're choosing you and you're the best. It's like, it's so cracked and weird, but there's a logic to it. You go, oh God, there's people like this. This is awful because clearly Jordan Peele has met awful people like this.
Oh yeah. The other thing that really struck me was the entire concept of the sunken place. Like one of the most powerful things you can do in an art form is use an allegory to get life experience across. And so like my issue I'm going to bring, because why not take another shot at Wonder Woman 84? The problem with that movie is that Diana's agency is taken from her, and the movie can't pass the Bechdel test to save its life if it wanted to. And there's it's a very common issue with just poorly written characters. That's just what it is. This movie takes the idea of agency to an entirely new level, where it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, Chris has his agency. He knows what he wants. He knows what he doesn't want to do certain things, but his ability to act on it is taken from him by this white woman. And he knows what is right. He knows what is wrong. He knows what's happening is wrong, but he's completely had the power taken from him to do anything about it. And in the past year, I've had some very honest discussions with some of my African-American friends. And I've heard the stories of, law enforcement interactions where it's, I know what's right. I know what I should or shouldn't be able to do, but I can't because I want to be able to drive home. And it just kind of brought this stark realization, like, even 4 years ago when it came out, it was just like, it provided a glimpse into something from a way that shouldn't make any sense, but yet connected with me on a very deep and emotional level. I don't know if it quite hit you quite that hard, but that's what really struck me, is that it's just knowing what your rights are, knowing what you can do, and having that taken away from you. It was heartbreaking on a whole new level.
Yeah, it affected me in that way just because I recognize, the movies that scare me, which are the body snatcher movies, the Stepford Wives. I mean, not the comedy Stepford Wives, the original Stepford Wives. Movies about losing your identity frighten me. I haven't had a lot of experience with this, but I have known people who have lost members of their family to cults and such. That thing scares me. Just losing who you are, that freaks me out. So that part of the film freaked me out, and I love that the film, because the way it's presented, you initially think it's just going to be about, it's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's that movie, and it's like that awful, or it's like that awful remake with Ashton Kutcher and Bernie Mac. It's like, it's that movie. Like, it seems like it's, sorry to bring that up, but it seems, like the setup is that. So the movie is self-aware of the whole idea of the African-American boyfriend coming home to meet the white rich parents. Like, so initially the characters, at least his character, it seems like he's reacting like, okay, I understand how awkward this is. And, and he, his expectations are completely, unmet because, of course, he doesn't understand that there's this whole agenda out to get him, and he's not aware, until it's too late. The scene with Lakeith Steinfeld.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the beginning. Oh, you're just like, not today. I know that they do a mofos in this part of this. Yeah, that opening scene is so good.
I mean, when he reappears, it bothers me. I mean, that's always the thing that gets me in any of the body snatchers movies, where you're seeing a character completely, their essence is sucked and there's some different entity inside of them. That always bothers me. So that part of the film really creeped me out. By the way, let's Daniel Kaluuya. He's not even from here.
No. You would never know if you had
American, and he kills it. He's fantastic. I mean, I got to bring that up. I mean, every time I see him and stuff now, I'm like, God, this guy is fantastic.
He was really good in Widows. Like, Widows is an underappreciated movie.
Terrifying in Widows. Okay. Such an awful villain in Widows. I was not rooting for him in Widows.
Are you okay? Should we cover that movie at some point? Because that feels like that movie came and went.
Well, I mean, Steve McQueen. You and I are Steve McQueen fans. We're talking about Steve McQueen in coming weeks. No, I'd be happy to talk about Widows. I love that film.
Okay,
it didn't work for everybody, but I loved that movie. So yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Another thing that I loved is like how this movie took a complete dump on the idea of the white savior.
Yeah,
it was so great. Oh, it was so delicious. Yes.
And to talk about Peele's innovativeness as a filmmaker, the bingo scene, brilliant. The bingo scene bothers me so much. There's no dialogue. There's almost no sound in that scene, and the movie isn't complete. It's you're meant to absorb how wrong it is, but you don't know exactly why it's wrong yet. And that's one of those scenes. Every time I rewatch the film, it's like, oh God, that's awful. But brilliant. This is good storytelling. Peele knows how to tell a good horror tale, a really good horror yarn, and it's all over this film.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Honestly, I'm kind of good just leaving Get Out there, unless there's more you want to cover.
No, I'm fine. Okay. This is, I do love the film, but this is a movie that's been discussed, dissected, pulled apart. I mean, usually it takes years for this to happen. I mean, in the year the movie came out, I mean, there was an art gallery dedicated to the art of this movie. I mean, not to, it's fine. The movie deserves it. It's a terrific movie, but yeah, I definitely don't feel like we need to get in. Us is the one I want to really get into because nobody has that movie figured out just yet.
Yeah, I revisited it today beforehand. I told you, I was like, I wanted to revisit it because through the lens of everything that's happened societally over the past year, we'll say, I wondered if I could glean more from it because it felt like there was something there and I just wasn't getting it. And I still feel that way the second time around. But when I say, even when Get Out came out, I was of the opinion, I'm like, this is a thriller. Yes, it has horror elements. Like it takes a bonkers left-hand turn at the end of the movie. When you figure out what the actual goal of the bad guys is. Us is a outright horror movie.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I feel like in so many ways he stepped up his game. Like I didn't know how you could from Get Out. I was just like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm curious. And then we got this movie and I was not prepared for it.
Yeah, Us frightened me, really frightened me. Get Out is scary, but Us is I mean, it's a lot more primal in its fear. It's dealing with, I mean, I'll have those. I had it last night where I'll get up and I'm kind of groggy, and I'll go up and and use the bathroom at like 2 a.m. and I'm washing my hands. I look in the mirror and I don't like to look at myself. And there's like a little night light, so I'm underlit and I look creepy. And I'm like doing that. I'm kind of like looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, no, that's creepers. This movie is all those fears of. I was having a conversation with my friend Megan about this recently, just how I don't want a clone because I would just be thinking about when can I get rid of this guy? I don't want somebody who looks like me, knows my secrets. I don't want to share a life with a secret other. And if I had a secret other, I would just be thinking, when can I kill this guy? When can
wow, dude.
It's probably maybe not something I should be admitting on a podcast because maybe one day they'll be showing this in the courtroom. But if I killed my clone, screw him. Who cares? But I just, that stuff creeps me out. Like I don't want an other, and this movie is about an other that is hostile, that means to erase you from existence because of a grudge that's because of a wrong you did that you're not even aware of, a world that you're not even aware of that is this horrible this horrible, to use the word, bastardization of the real world. This is nightmare stuff. Get Out is a horror yarn, but this is the stuff of true nightmares.
I think it was a far riskier film. The conceit, when I saw it, it was when I had AMC A-List, which I missed that. I hope AMC sticks around because that $20 a month was like the best money I could spend. But there's this scene. Spoilers for us. I know it's 2 years old, but still, you can't talk about these movies without getting into spoilers. There's a moment when the tethered show up, and you've got Lupita Nyong'o doing that very interesting choice for Red.
Yeah.
And then you got them communicating via clicks and grunts and groans or whatever. And the audience started kind of chuckling a little bit. It's like, this is a lot to take in. And there was a decision that had to be made, that I had to make personally. It was, am I going to roll with this movie or am I not? Like, that's a central conceit for any movie. Either you're going to buy into it or you're not. If you don't, the movie's not going to work. And then I was like, wait a minute. What was Get Out about again? Taking the brains out of white people and putting in black people's bodies? Like, how outlandish was that? If I was willing to roll with that, I'm going to roll with this. And once I did, I think I was rewarded with an amazing experience, like cinematically. It was fantastic. I think someday I'm going to get through one of these episodes one of these days, folks, where I don't put the ScreenGeeks logo up in the middle of an episode. It's not today, but I'm hoping it'll be soon. What struck me is just how well rounded the family was at the beginning of the film. Like Winston Duke, I'm not gonna lie, that first like half hour of the movie, he is my definition of dad goals. Like the god awful jokes, him being nerdy and loving his family and not caring who knows about it. I loved that whole bit of this movie. Okay, before I let you talk Winston Duke, we had to do a quick talk, but like your wife just walked by and you said what we were watching, and what did she just say?
What's that?
What did your wife say when you said we were talking Us? What was Julia's response?
It freaked her the frick out.
Yeah. There we go. Yes. Okay. So Winston Duke dad goals. That's where we were. I don't know if you had that same feeling or not.
Oh, just about being a super dad? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, he's definitely the kind of dad that I love and I wish I could hang out with. Yeah, he's a good man.
yeah, who I
I
want to
love him.
be one day. Yes. Um, yeah, this movie was outright horror from the, as soon as the lights go out, and I think this was really Peele flexing his muscles as a filmmaker, like especially as a horror filmmaker. He's like, look, I know y'all thought Get Out was scary. Let me show you what scary actually looks like. Like
Yeah.
that opening bit in the in the amusement park where we don't
Mhm.
even see anything happen made my skin crawl. Just
That's the
as a young
Santa
girl.
Cruz boardwalk. I've been there once, and it was a dream for me to go there. Of course, it was featured in The Lost Boys. I love that place. For me, it's a magical, magical place. So to see it used as the setting of this truly dreadful scene, well, if anything, I just want to go there and I want to look in the basement now, see what they got. But no, in all seriousness, I'm with you. The opening, it's 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 scary in a way that's relatable. It's like looking under your bed at night with all the lights off. It's just like it's that kind of like this isn't right. Um, yeah, very troubling. But brilliant, a great way to set. I mean, it's essentially a fairy tale of sorts. The way it sets up with,
In like a Grimm's fairy tale kind of way.
exactly. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's basically about two young girls and how their presence in each other's life, winds up setting up these chain of events, and you have this whole question of identity, this sense of nurture versus nature, where you grow up, how that ultimately dictates who you become as a person, and how it can be so different, especially if you're not aware of another version of you that's just below you, living an existence that's almost parallel. It's a deeper film, I think, just because it's not clear cut. Excuse me, about its sociological implications. It's not like Get Out, which is very clearly, with us, it's a lot more up to interpretation. It made my top 10 best of the year list, which Get Out did not. I love Get Out, but it didn't make my top 10. Us did. It was, for me, it's a 4-star movie. I thought it was one of the best films of the year, one of the best horror films I've seen in a long time. Lupita Nyong'o, I thought just best performance of the year by an actress, period. Nothing else came close that year. I have a problem with the logic of the tethered. I think it's a little messy. I think some of it we're supposed to take in metaphorical terms, but the questions that a lot of smarter people than me have already asked have been asked. Who's paying that electricity bill? What is with the rabbits? Why do they have to only eat rabbits? And I think it's again, it works. It works in nightmare logic. I think if you just accept the whole film as you're looking at a nightmare, I think it's fine. But if you do stop to think about the logic of the tethered, how they're living, and I do have some issues with that.
That's fair. There is that bit at the beginning talking about the thousands of miles of underground tunnels that are unused,
Yeah,
and so it kind of
very
gives
cool.
you the out. But I totally get it. Like it does ask a lot of questions. But again, that kind of gets back to the Get Out thing. If I'm willing to roll with the insanity that Get Out brought me, I'm going to roll with Us. I'm just going to kind of take it and see where it goes. And I think there's definitely a grander sociological idea to it of the lower class folks who are, I mean, we live in a country where poverty just shouldn't exist. I mean, in reality, we're advanced enough. We've been able, yes, our poverty is greater than, is rich by other country standards, but that doesn't really excuse what's going on. And I feel like that was kind of a commentary on that in some way, in that folks who are having to work 2 and 3 minimum wage jobs to try to make it through the day, no one really sees them. And these folks are trying to claw and scrape their way through. And I'm not going to say that this movie is a call to the 99% to overthrow the 1%. I think it asks questions about, are we taking care of our brothers and sisters, our fellow human beings? And I think that's a very interesting thing to do, especially when the tables are flipped, where it's almost like a Prince and Pauper kind of situation.
Yes, it
I
was
just
exactly like that. Yeah.
realized that right now, and but flipped in reverse, and the resentment that can come as a result of that. And it's just I love this movie. It also shows Peele's grasp of the genre, in that it has not only the single funniest home automation assistant malfunctions of all time, it also provides a cackling level of humor. Like when that scene happened, and we'll just say Ophelia doesn't call the police, the entire theater erupted in laughter. And then it was, all right, folks, we're getting ready to go into the home stretch now. I hope you enjoyed that chance to catch your breath, because you're not getting another one. And it really showed a deft hand on Peele's part, knowing that we need that moment to kind of have that catharsis. Like, it was so desperately needed at that point, because a lot of dark stuff happens. And yes, we're happy when Daddy Winston Duke gets to the upper hand on Abraham. So Gabe takes out Abraham. It wasn't like this action movie catchphrase, take out the bad guy. It was a sense of relief that he had survived an encounter. And I guess because it could be because I'm a dad. Like, it's entirely possible. I would, like, even if I wouldn't have reacted the same way, I recognized a lot of the things that were being done as a father. Like, I'm the dad, I'm the provider, I need to take charge of this situation. When Adelaide's just like, shut up, dude, you need to stop talking to these people. Yeah, it's nice you got a wallet, you'll give them whatever. It's not gonna help. There's just so much detail with so many of these characters that it just, like, Elizabeth Moss's character and Tim Heidecker, like, they're such complete douchebags, and I don't like them, but you still kind of feel bad for them when bad things happen. I'll just say.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You gave me a lot of great things to think about.
Sorry, I just unloaded.
No. That was great, Dave. I mean, you made a terrific point. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think the way to look at this film, and this is something I haven't completely thought about before, but I think you're completely right. I think the way to wrap your mind around the premise is just to think, like, this is what would happen if an uprising of homeless people all over the world happened. Again, because of the logistics of, I mean, I have, just questions about, I don't know if that would really work the way the movie says it would work, but I mean, the whole thing feels like a nightmare. So fine. In terms of Peele's ability as a filmmaker, I mean, the sequence that you're just talking about where Elizabeth Moss's family is attacked, Peele shoots it as a wide shot. So we're looking at this glass house and we're looking at these figures disappearing and savagely butchering this family. I mean, that's incredible filmmaking, really smart, because the shock is there. It doesn't water anything down. It doesn't give us a safe distance. We don't want to see this, and we're seeing it. It's like looking at a dollhouse gone bad. And that whole part of the movie, because that's where we understand the sci-fi implications of it, because initially we think, okay, this is just, it's a home invasion movie. But then when we learn that this is something that's happening to everybody all over the world,
it's home invasion meets the invitation. That's what it is.
It's very frightening the way it's portrayed. Because they're all wearing the same attire, they all have the same mongoloid way of acting. They have their own language, which is a very unnerving thing that the movie does. I mean, they sound like geese honking in the distance. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, that was the part of the movie. I mean, that whole sequence, the whole second act of the film, I thought was really frightening. Just because it just shows, it was like, man, like, Peele it's a second movie. He's now dealing with 20 million instead of 10 million. But my God, I mean, the scope on the thing was huge. And then when you get to the story, returning to the scene of the crime, returning to the boardwalk in the daytime, and it's a series of action sequences and confrontations, and then Adelaide's ultimate return to the world of the tethered. I mean, it's just great filmmaking. Those shots of her ascending down into hell, essentially going down the escalator, and her ultimate confrontation with herself. This actress giving two completely different performances and the editing and the filmmaking is so good that I didn't even bother to look at how good the special effects are. It's like the movie Dead Ringers, except even more advanced. I never questioned that I was looking at two different characters. I never didn't even stop to, because I was so invested with the story and what Lupita was doing.
And I really appreciated how Peele is willing to give his audience credit. So the film's final revelation is hinted at pretty heavily throughout. And if you're an observant viewer, you're going to kind of figure out what's going on before we have that final reveal. And as opposed to being like, hey, you're stupid if you didn't catch this, it was, okay, cool, now everyone's caught up. now someone else also knows what's going on, and how's he going to react? And just that scene where he just slides the mask down was just so unnerving in a new way. It's like, oh, are they going about to get ready to go down the same path to try to survive? What's happening? I don't know if you picked it. Did you pick up on it before it actually came down to what the reveal was?
It did. The moment where we see Adelaide in Elizabeth Moss home, in Elizabeth Moss's home, and the savagery of she's killing one of the tethered, and it's with a real guttural savagery, and it made me wonder, like, I don't know, because she had been so quiet. There's something very creepy about Adelaide that had kind of resonated with me throughout the film, and I just thought, I'm just being a jerk. Why is there something about Lupita, who's gorgeous? Why is there something about her performance that I don't like? You see the film a second time, it's like, it's right there. It's right there in front of you the whole time. Of course, there was something about her that's creepy because she has this, this teddy bear of a husband, and she seems distracted, possessed, preoccupied mentally. But yeah, that was that. I will not claim that I figured it out, but I will say that was when she's at Elizabeth Moss' home and she's murdering one of the tethered, and her son sees her that first time. That was, for me, the indication that, okay, there's something about her character that we're going to find out. And but it still gave me the chills. It gives me the chicken skin right now, even thinking about that final moment between the two of them while she's driving. It's creepy as frick. And it makes you question who is the hero of this story, because Red has a tragic life. Red, the horrors that she experienced and underwent. I mean, it's hearing those stories, and even the one that Red tells us the first time we meet her, which is so frightening. But it's like, God, Red she's not. I don't know if she's the hero of this story, but I don't think Adelaide is the hero.
I think it's better to say that Red may be a victim in the story.
Yes, definitely.
So what I came away from the movie, okay, before I get to what I came away from the movie, every single actor who plays two different versions of themselves does so expertly. Even the twins are just unnerving in all the right ways. And it's just so daggone well executed. And, as opposed to having a grander sociological, message that I took away from it, it really came back down to that timeless, thing that comes down in horror movies so often, is that we're the monsters. And it was just, it's unnerving on a whole new level when it's seen on this scale. But it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, it's mainstream horror movies typically don't scare me. It's usually the films from other countries. I feel like, filmmakers from other countries, they have an understanding of this genre and, a way to implicate the suffering and the things that they've experienced in their life crisper, firmer. I mean, when I think of the movies that really have scared me in the last 20 years, I think of A Tale of Two Sisters. I think of With a Friend Like Harry. I think of Let the Right One In. American mainstream horror movies, I tend to really enjoy them, especially when they're on the caliber of It, Chapter One,
Chapter One, not two, just one.
Yeah, just the first. There you go. But yeah, this is an American horror film that I think it's every bit as bold and risk-taking and certainly as scary as the best of them. I really do. I can't claim. I mean, I'm still wrestling with everything in this movie, just because, again, I said there's things to me that didn't quite add up. But I do like it better than Get Out, just because the scale of it is amazing. The performances are great. And as you've indicated, I like this family. I enjoyed this family. I liked hanging out with this family. I sympathized with them. I wanted them to live through the whole experience. And the movie definitely did not give me an indication that everyone was going to survive and that everything was going to be okay. It's not a predictable film in that respect. And the challenges of this film are just, oh God. I mean, what Peele asks of these actors, not in the child actors and the grown-up actors. I mean, it's, he's asking for two completely different performances, and also having to share scenes with yourself, which you're going to film later. I mean, just to wrap your mind around that.
Yeah, it's so well done. Like, I'm thinking going forward of, like, what do I expect from Peele? Do I want him to keep being a horror filmmaker? And like the person who comes to mind is kind of Quentin Tarantino. When he's on, he is on, and it's fantastic. But it's like I kind of wish he'd stretch his arms a little, stretch his legs out a little bit, and spread his wings and kind of try something new and different. Because it now at this point it's just all revenge movies with no one you like. I hate to say that because I really like him as a filmmaker, which is probably why I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like that movie was such a departure from his other stuff. What I've seen from the first two films from Jordan Peele is this is a guy who is willing to play, who wants to play in the sandbox that is horror, but he's made two such drastically different films with such drastically different techniques and different stories and different messages. Like it's the only reason that we know that they're the same filmmakers that we've seen him do the interviews. Like it's almost two films made by two different directors, and they're both excellent and excel at what they're trying to accomplish as far as I'm concerned. So it's like, I can't wait to see what he does next. I wasn't the biggest fan of what Twilight Zone episodes I've seen. I've got CBS All Access. Did you watch the whole season or did you just watch the first couple?
I watched the first season. There's one episode that's amazing. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's the one that everybody talks about where this woman, is this African-American woman on the road with her son. She's driving her son to college and they're constantly pulled over by this black cop, and everything that happens, it's like this black cop is constantly just harassing them, getting in their face. And the episode came out, right in the midst of all the stuff that was going on, I guess with Charlottesville, I think. Mm-hmm. And Jules and I were just stunned. And there's even a Black Lives Matter flag in the episode. And I just turned to Julia like, is this shot yesterday? This is uncanny. And that episode is extraordinary. Forgive me, I don't remember the name of it. I should look it up. But yeah, that was the great episode of that that series. Otherwise, it was a letdown. It was a little too cutesy about its connection to the original series. It had all these Easter eggs that didn't go anywhere.
To be fair, he was an EP on it. So, if someone gave
us...
The
episode was called Replay. Yeah, the episode was called Replay, and it stars Sanaa Lathan. Okay. Honestly, it was one of the best examples of television that came out that year. The rest of the series did not live up to that one episode, which was so extraordinary. The other episodes they weren't scary enough, they weren't well defined enough, well produced. But the whole the episode, the series, minor spoiler, but the series itself ended with this self-reflexive episode where Jordan Peele is actually making an episode of The Twilight Zone, and people are like high-fiving him, congratulating him on Us and Get Out. So it's a little self-congratulatory. And then through use of CGI, there's an appearance of Rod Serling. And, it just feels, you guys, no.
I'm going to have to watch it. I have to watch that one.
Yeah. So that's the last episode of season 1, and it's a lot of this, but yeah, the episode Replay. If you could just watch just that episode, it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, and on one hand, he's the EP, so he's the executive producer. And let's be honest, if someone gave you or I the opportunity to EP The Twilight Zone, would you say no? I don't think I would.
Yeah, no question. And there's good work there. There was an 80s version of The Twilight Zone. It was like it ran from I think 85 to 87, I believe. Those are episodes like directed by like Wes Craven and Joe Dante. I think that version was better. I think that it's more consistent. The new Twilight Zone, it tries very hard to be woke every time. And a lot of those episodes, they overreach or they're underthinking it, or it's strange. Like there is one episode Replay in the season 1. I can't vouch for season 2, but season 1, it's a lot of episodes that are well produced and it had actors in it I liked. But there's another episode where a child gets elected president. It's like, well, I know what this is about. I know what this, what the metaphor is there. It's literally this kid is elected president and how awful that is. It's like, okay, well, that's funny as a political cartoon. But as an episode of The Twilight Zone, they run out of juice, like 5 minutes in, and it's a 30-minute episode. So too much of that.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm excited to see what he's going to do going forward. He's more than proven himself to be a capable creator.
If I were to do a comparison, I wrote about this in my article too, my review of Us. I would say that Get Out was his sixth sense because it was universally loved, universally embraced. It was a giant hit, instant classic. And I think Us is his Unbreakable. I think it's going to be I think it's going to take a few years for everybody
Okay.
to fully get on board. And look, I mean, the movie was successful. It made over $100 million. But it's a divisive film because it's a weird film and it's a different film in the way that people, initially with Unbreakable, people are like, well, that's not The Sixth Sense. And I think, I think it's going to be that kind of a film. I think it's going to take us a little time to completely unpack everything that's brilliant about Us. Yeah, expectations are everything. I feel bad for Peele because, I mean, whatever the third movie is, I mean, people are just like, what do you got? What do you got? I mean, Tarantino, people forget this. Like after Pulp Fiction, Tarantino took about 3 years and then he came out with Jackie Brown. And Jackie Brown was not liked when it came out. It was long, it's slow, it's not Pulp Fiction. Now we love Jackie Brown, but it took a long time. Sometimes, it's great that, for every filmmaker like Scorsese or Spielberg, who, in their heyday were just knocking them out of the park every single time. Sometimes filmmakers have to experiment and try stuff. So I do feel bad for Peele because, they want, everybody wants to Get Out again. And that's a hard act to top.
As long as we don't get a Happening, I'm good. No Happening. I'm not even a big fan of Signs, even though I know other people are. Okay, let's wrap this up.
Signs it's way better than The Happening.
This is true.
Give it that. Signs is solid next to The Happening. My gosh.
That's fair. Okay, let's wrap this up. We're like closing like an hour and a half, 2 hours now. So this went way longer than anticipated. I'm glad we had a lot to say. We got it out. Next week we are half programming around Black History Month. Not really. It kind of worked out this way, just like Jordan Peele's one of these guys that's been on my radar. I've wanted to talk his movies. At least next week. We're not sure if this is going to span 1 or 2 weeks, but we're going to talk the Small Axe films from Steve McQueen. Speaking of an earlier reference to the man, I wanted to get to them just because they've shown up on so many top 10 of 2020 lists. That's kind of a good time to try to catch up some. And so we're going to tackle at least the first part of those next week. We might stretch it into over 2 weeks. Depends. I mean, it's 5 films, I think, 5 or 6 films.
Yeah. The first one's 2 hours. It's the longest, and the others are much shorter and they're of varying lengths. But yeah, I mean, it is a commitment, it's not that we don't want to see it. It's just,
No.
So I gotta
we want to have the time. We want to have the time to actually watch them and digest them and have something to say about them, as opposed to just being like, "Yep, they're good. Let's talk these 5 movies in an hour and good luck." I mean, if it warrants more, we're going to take longer. So, just a heads up about what's coming up. If you want to catch old episodes or read reviews or anything like that, you can go to ScreenGeeks.com. If you want to catch old video episodes, you can go to Facebook.com/ScreenGeeks or YouTube.ScreenGeeks.com. And let's see here. We don't do Twitch much anymore. I'm playing with an idea of maybe doing something on there. If you want to shoot us an email, by all means, podcast Barry or Dave all at ScreenGeeks.com. You can also message us on Facebook, and we will catch that as well. If you want to shoot us a voicemail, give us a call at 970-315-2058, and we'll be happy to play that. And have you got anything you want to talk coming out soon, Barry, or we'll just get the heck out of here?
We'll just get the heck out of here. Yeah, I'm all over the place. If you want to read my movie reviews, Rotten Tomatoes got them, Hollywood and Toto's got them. Yeah, I'm there. Just Google me, movie review, and the name of the film you want to see. There's probably something out there.
Fair enough. And I'm going to be doing attending Slam Dance virtually because it's $10 for a festival pass. So yeah, I'm going to get some stuff, and I'll probably write up some reviews over at the site too. So until next week, this is Dave.
This is Barry.
Take it easy.